Spiritwind. Here we are again, giving you new topics to think about and new subjects to come and visit us with. Remember, Spiritwind is a study group for spiritual adventurers, and we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 at Unity of Auburn. Everyone is welcome. And we do have these new subjects every single month. And if one just kind of piques your interest, we invite you to come and help us discuss. This is a discussion group. It isn't just a teaching situation. But we do appreciate our teacher and leader, Rick Reich, who is here with us again today. And we're going to first of all review a little bit of the topic that we were discussing in July, which is ethics. Now, there are a lot of different schools of thought in the ethics category. So, Rick, would you like to run us through some of these that we've been discussing?
Yes, I picked out three of the ones that we discussed last month, but I just wanted to say a couple of words in introduction in that ethics, if you don't understand what ethics is, it's a branch of philosophy that's also referred to as moral philosophy. So ethics deals with morals, and so probably when we think of that, or at least people in the West do, we often think of the Ten Commandments. And one of the things that's important to realize is, and this is something that all the ethical systems deal with, and that is, are there moral absolutes, or are morals and ethics relative? And but whereas most Christians and Jews believe that the Ten Commandments are moral absolutes, they actually aren't, and I'm not going to go into that, but I'll just refer you to my book, Two Ways to Lose Your Faith, pages 85 to 87 and 119 to 120, and I refer to that and show examples of how they are not moral absolutes. Even before Christianity, back in 262 BCE, Stoicism existed a few hundred years before even Christianity, and it was founded by a gentleman by the name of Zeno of Chittim. He died in 262 BCE, and he was the one that founded Stoicism. Stoicism was named after the place where the Stoic philosophers met, which was called the Stoa, which simply meant in Greek a painted porch, and so they were named after where they met. Stoicism lasted from 262 from the early 200s, to all the way till the 4th century in the 300s, when Constantine made Christianity the religion of the empire, and that wiped out Stoicism. But anyway, the next person that was a Stoic philosopher was Epictetus, who lived from 55 to 135 CE, which is the Common Era, and he was a slave, actually, who received his freedom sometime after the death of Nero. And then finally, the last Stoic philosopher of note was Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor from 161 to 180, and he wrote what's still popular today, which is simply a book that's simply called The Meditations, and it kind of sets forth the ideas of Stoicism. And Stoicism taught that virtue, the highest good, is based on the knowledge that the wise live in harmony with reason. And they see that reason tells them that nature is indifferent to the waxing and waning of fortune and pleasure and pain, all these things, that they are totally beyond our control. And so what Stoicism taught was that those things are meant to be endured. And so today we say things, a person is stoic, who's able to keep a stiff upper lip and endure through hardship and pain. And that's what their goal was, to become indifferent to pain and suffering. The other person I wanted to talk about was Thomas Aquinas. During the medieval times, he was probably the greatest philosopher and theologian at that time, and he even wrote what was called the Summa Theologica, which means the sum of theology, and it was a multi-encyclopedic work that was multi-volume that dealt with the sum of theology. That's what Summa Theologica means. Supposedly touching on every possible question you could have. Interestingly enough, at the end of his life, one day he had an experience that shook him to the core, and it left him saying only, "Everything I have written is straw."
Do we know what that experience was?
We don't know. We don't know what happened, but he didn't talk anymore either. He quit speaking, yeah. Anyway, he taught what was known as virtue ethics, and there's a number of groups that still practice virtue ethics. And virtues point the way to moral guidance. And so, for instance, the church at the time that Thomas Aquinas was, back in the 1200s, said that there were three theological virtues, which were faith, hope, and love. And then there were 4 cardinal virtues, which were prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. And then finally there are 7 virtues and vices. And so the point of having virtues and vices, the vices tell us what not to do, and the virtues tell us what we should do, see? And so what they would do is they would take the two...
these are like the 7 deadly sins?
Right.
Oh, okay.
So they would take the 7 deadly sins, which were also part of the Jewish faith, and they would pair them with virtues that would supposedly counteract it. So there would be, if you had the deadly sin of pride, it would be healed by the virtue of humility, or greed would be healed by generosity, lust would be healed by chastity, anger by patience, gluttony by temperance, and envy by kindness. The last one doesn't really work for me personally. I don't know why being kind takes care of envy, other than, I guess if you're kind, you won't envy people. I don't know. But that's what virtue ethics are. The next I wanted to look at, lastly, is something more contemporary. I mean, this is from our time. It's from the Dalai Lama, who was born in 1935, and he wrote a book. It's called Ethics for a New Millennium. And he uses as a starting point our basic goodness. Now, in most Christian traditions, regardless of the denomination, whether they're Catholic or Protestant, believe in some form of the idea of original sin, which says that we're born originally bad and not good. But as with Matthew Fox, who wrote the book Original Blessing, against original sin, the Dalai Lama his starting point in his ethics is an understanding of the basic goodness of people. And he teaches that compassion is the source of all lasting peace, happiness, and that it's through kindness, honesty, truth, and justice towards others that we ensure what is best for ourselves and what is best for others. Then he says that in order to do this, we must restrain those things which inhibit compassion, while on the other hand, cultivate the things that increase compassion. And then he ends talking about ethical things that we need to deal with today in our time. And he says, since we now live in a global community, we must take universal responsibility for such things as poverty, pollution, and war. And that is the bottom line.
So ethics in general is the most virtuous way to live your life.
Right.
And to solve a problem. And they don't teach very much of that in school.
No, they don't.
Though, do they? And it
No.
seems like problem solving should include an ethical way to do problem solving.
And it should. And ethics are taught in most colleges or even community colleges. Mm-hmm. But they're only taught as electives.
Right. So if you choose to take
so
that
if you
class.
choose to take it, you'll think about what's ethical, but if you don't, you just won't get that input. But.
And I think we brought up last time, too, that ethics is going to have to come to the forefront a little bit more with our discussion of AI.
Exactly.
And self-driving cars, them making the decisions on their own, and
Right.
who's programming these ethical
Right, exactly.
questions into these computers.
Right.
It seems like it's kind of hard to forecast every scenario
Right.
that might happen.
But at least like setting ethics, like we've done this last month, at least gives you some tools, at least in the way you think about and how you look at situations and issues,
That there are guidelines out there.
There are.
You don't have to just make them up yourself.
No.
Oh, okay, good. That sounds great. Well, ethics is a great topic to discuss, and I'm glad we did have that discussion in our Spiritwind group this last month. And so now we're going to go on to August and have a new subject.
Yes.
And so our new subject this month is...
Charles Fillmore.
Okay, and who is Charles Fillmore?
Well, Charles Fillmore is actually the founder of the religious movement, which was called the Unity School of Christianity.
Oh, okay.
But let me go back a bit. The Unity School of Christianity was still is a part of what's called the New Thought movement,
Okay.
which is not to be confused with the New Age movement.
So what's
You want to
the
say?
difference? That the New Thought movement has much more of a central thinking with the divine. And the New Age movement would be more of no real central divine in its
Right.
thoughts.
Right. And the other thing is the New Age movement has taken certain things from the New Thought movement, because the New Thought movement focuses on positive thinking and in fact, the similarities of all the different New Thought groups is healing, divine healing, positive thinking, prosperity, and affirmative prayer. And even in the New Age community, there's a big deal with affirmations.
And this is all self-directed, like
Yeah.
I am the one who can take all of these affirmations and self-directed meditations to help myself. I'm not
Right.
waiting for someone else
Right,
to do it.
right,
I am control of me.
right, exactly. Now, what I was going to say something, some people out there might not know what affirmative prayer is.
Okay.
And what it is what people normally do when they pray is they pray petitionary prayer.
Mm-hmm.
They make a petition.
I want this.
God,
Please help me do
get
this.
a job, heal so-and-so, whatever. They're making petitions. Affirmatory prayer is making affirmations. So if you wanted so-and-so to be healed, you wouldn't say, oh, God, please heal so-and-so. You would say, thank you, God, that so-and-so is healed.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you're affirming what you want rather than begging God for what you want, you know. And that's common to pretty most of the
New thought.
New Thought groups. And the New Thought movement is thought to have begun with a gentleman by the name of Phineas Quimby.
Okay.
He lived back in 1802 to 1866 in New England, and how they say it started with him is he learned about the power of the mind to heal itself, but he saw this through hypnosis.
Oh.
Which through a gentleman back then named Charles Poyen was doing hypnosis for healing. Mm-hmm. But what happened is other groups started to pick that up. The first one that really picked it up was Mary Baker Eddy.
Oh, Christian Science.
Founded Christian Science. Mm-hmm. But instead of using hypnosis, she used other methods of divine healing, which also Unity did, and we'll get into that in a minute. And another group was the Church of Religious Science. Mm-hmm. But another person I wanted to mention in this was Emmett Fox. He lived from 1886 to 1951. He had what was called the Divine Science Church in New York, and he had thousands of people attend. And he's referred to as the godparent of AA.
Oh.
Because he knew the founder of AA and that. Anyway, and all these other New Thought people will quote Emmett Fox, mm-hmm. you know. Anyway, so the book that I'm drawing my information from, if anyone would like to get it to read or study themselves, it's called The Essential Charles Fillmore, The Collected Writings of a Missouri Mystic. And it came out on Unity Books in 1999. So Charles Fillmore was actually born on August 22nd in 1854 on a Indian reservation just outside St. Cloud, Minnesota. You know, that Minnesota in those days was still in the wild. So he lived on this Indian reservation of the Ojibwe Nation. And his father had a trading store, post, what do they call it?
Trading post.
It had a trading post there and traded with the Chippewa Indians. But the story's told that one day when Charles was just 2 years old, that a number of Sioux Indians rushed into their cabin when the father wasn't home, and they kidnapped Charles right out of his mother's arms. And he was gone all day, and obviously his mother was beside herself, but strangely enough, that evening they brought him back. Now, to me, that would have probably suggested maybe he was more trouble than he was worth.
And it was the Sioux Nation, not the...
No, it wasn't the Ojibwe or the...
Yeah,
or
so
the
it was a
others.
different
It was a
tribe.
different tribe
Yeah.
even. But interestingly enough, when Charles looked back on it in his life, he felt that what really had happened was that they had used him in some kind of mystical ceremony.
Oh.
So that's what he thought. But the big thing that happened in his life after that was when he was 10 years old, he dislocated his hip in a skating accident. Now, just dislocating your hip wouldn't seem like that big a deal. At least it wouldn't now, but the socket had been totally destroyed and his leg stopped growing because of it. So he had one leg shorter than the other. He went through all this time of finding different ways to put
Something in his shoes
to get him leveled out and that. In fact, he says this, I got to read this, it's pretty graphic. He says, I was bled, leeched, cupped, lanced, seasoned, blistered, rolled. 6 running sores were artificially produced on my leg to draw out the disease condition that was presumed to be within. And then after 2 years, whatever it was, the disease had run its course and left him with one leg shorter than the other and all that, as I was saying. Well, sometime later he met a woman named Myrtle Page. Name was really Mary Carolyn Page, but she went by Myrtle. And she was born August 6, 1845, and was 9 years older than Charles. But they got married. She had contracted tuberculosis at a young age and was unable to finish school until she finished high school finally when she was 21 years old. And from there she attended Oberlin College for a year and got her teaching license, and she taught for 13 years and met Charles, and they were married in 1881. In 1886, when she and Charles went to a lecture by a gentleman by the name of E.B. Weeks, Dr. E.B. Weeks, he went to a lecture on divine healing. The two of them went to this lecture on divine healing, and when she left, Myrtle believed she healed herself through affirmative prayer. And she even remembered and wrote down the prayer that she affirmed, and it was, I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. And she affirmed that, and she no longer had any trace of tuberculosis. Now Fillmore's leg also was eventually healed, and he didn't have to wear a brace any longer or anything like that. So they both were convinced that they were on the right track. Fillmore was a devout student of philosophy and religion. He was a voracious reader and studied everything, and because of, in the New Thought movement, they used what they call a metaphysical interpretation of Scripture, which is more of a symbolic interpretation than a literal one. And as he started studying these things, which they called metaphysical, finally what happened is he came to the point that Fillmore and his wife became involved in the New Thought movement themselves, and in 1889 he left his business and he began what was called Silent Unity, which exists to this day as well.
And so Silent Unity, from what I understand, is a prayer centered devotion.
Yeah, that goes
And
24 hours a day.
People from all over will send in their prayers, and there's a group of people that just sit there and pray over their requests.
Right. And so it was that Charles and his wife Myrtle founded Unity officially in 1889, and they became its first ordained ministers. Now, for the rest of the month, we'll be talking about all the different things he taught. And he taught what he called practical Christianity. And the interesting things is how, like, you have religious science and Christian science, and he referred to it as science as well. It sounds strange to people today, but what he meant by science was a form of Christianity that could be proven by experience.
Oh, right.
And he referred to that as practical Christianity.
And so is science of the mind part of this too?
The way we think, and that
Right.
goes back to affirmations and all.
Right, right. Well, we are definitely going to have a very interesting discussion in August, and I wanted to remind people that everyone is welcome to come and discuss Charles Fillmore, the New Thought movement, maybe even the New Age movement, and how it differs, and all of the ways that thought disease is caused by the mind and that you can overcome that.
Yeah.
And this is on Wednesday nights at 5:30 at Unity of Auburn, which is 1212 High Street in downtown Auburn. And like I said before, everyone is welcome. There's no charge, and we would just love to see you there. Thank you again, Rick.
Thank you.